Life as We Know It with Tom Walton.
I have had a lifelong love affair with newspapers. I think newspapers are the single greatest learning resource we have. Every day enough information to fill a book is assembled and distributed to educate us and keep us informed. No other medium can do that. Especially instructive are old newspapers, papers printed decades ago or longer. It's a hobby of mine to pore through those old papers, looking for stories that stir my imagination and paint a picture of a simpler and safer time. Often the stories I find are funny, but not always intentionally so. The Cincinnati Enquirer reported back in 1928 about a Toledo man who was arrested for driving carelessly while kissing his wife. Seems to us, the Enquirer noted, that sort of recklessness ought to be encouraged. How about that for responsible journalism? I also read about efforts in 1938 to eradicate foul broods of livestock. 24 farmers attended a bee meeting and heard the state apiarist urge the farmers to check their beehives carefully. What, you didn't know Ohio had a state apiarist? If any bees died during the winter, the farmers were advised to close off the hive's entrances so that bees from the outside would be prevented from entering and stealing the honey. Bees robbing bees, the apiarist said, causes the spreading of disease. Who knew? What I want to know is what happened to the bees that survived the winter and were still alive, doing their thing inside the hive when the entrances were sealed. Seems cruel to me. The same story reported that voluntary testing for Bang's disease was available. I looked it up, and Bang's disease is a contagious disease among cattle. It surprised me that the testing was only voluntary. How many cows actually volunteered to be tested? That's what I want to know. How about this story? A taxi driver was killed in 1932 during what was reported as a mix-up that occurred while police were investigating a fight between two guys digging in the river for clams. Wait, what? Don't you just want to know more? This is a made-for-TV movie waiting to happen. Several folks in what passed for high society in Tiffin, Ohio in 1888 paid up to $10 apiece in advance for a series of dance lessons. When they arrived for their first class, the instructor was a no-show, to the dismay of not only the students, but also the instructor's many creditors. You'd have to agree that scam artists have come a long way in 120 years. The same newspaper reported that an unfortunate Tiffin woman was badly injured when a huge chunk of ceiling plaster fell on her. The plaster weighed hundreds of pounds and fell from a height of 13 feet. It seems a miracle she was not killed, the newspaper reported. Well, yeah. 3 years later, in 1891, there was bad news for the town minister when a crowd of protesters who enjoy their alcohol threw rocks through windows at the pastor's home. He had been preaching temperance, and that evidently did not sit well with those whose love of liquor clouded their judgment. Finally, this from a newspaper ad printed in 1910. Quote, "The owner of a comfortable little farm desires a wife and is frank enough to come out in the open. This ad should convince the shyest of maidens that the opportunity has at last come. Girls between the ages of 30 and 40 should sit up and take notice." End of quote. I think the gentleman was a little full of himself.
Life as We Know It is written and hosted by Tom Walton and is a production of WGTE Public Media. Life as We Know It with Tom Walton can be heard on WGTE FM 91 every Monday afternoon during All Things Considered at 5:44 p.m. Or hear past episodes at wgte.org/life.